Under the bright theater lights in Dublin, the crowd murmured with the usual mixture of excitement and impatience. But when a thin, nervous Filipino boy stepped onto the stage, the atmosphere shifted. He looked out of place, too young, too small, too scared. His jacket was second-hand, the sleeves slightly too long, his shoes worn from months of walking to work because bus fare was a luxury. His name was Andreo Dela Cruz, a 19-year-old from Cebu who had arrived in Ireland with his mother after his father's passing forced them into a desperate search for a new life. As he stood at the center of the massive stage, he clasped his trembling hands together. One judge leaned forward immediately, concern softening her stern expression. "Oh, sweetheart, he's terrified," she whispered to the panel. Another judge tilted his head, noticing how Andreo's shoulders were pulled inward, as if he were trying to make himself smaller, less noticeable, less of a burden on the world. Andreo swallowed hard, his voice shaky when he finally addressed the microphone. Good evening. I'm Andreo, from Cebu City in the Philippines. My mama works every day so we can survive here. I want to make her proud today." His words were simple, but they carried a weight that pressed on every corner of the room. The judges exchanged a glance, now deeply attentive. One of them smiled gently and said, "Take a breath, love. We're with you. Just sing when you're ready." The music began, an instrumental track so recognizable that audience members straightened in their seats. A soft murmur rippled through the hall. It was an Elvis classic, one that no ordinary contestant would dare to touch. Andreo closed his eyes, as if gathering pieces of courage scattered inside him. Then it happened. The first note came out low, rich, unexpectedly powerful for such a fragile-looking boy. People froze mid-breath. His voice carried a depth that didn't match his age, a soulful vibration shaped by hardship and hope. It wasn't a copy of Elvis, it was a resurrection of emotion, of longing, of heartbroken beauty. The judge who had been concerned earlier slowly rose to her feet, unable to contain her shock. Another judge's eyes widened so dramatically it looked almost painful. The audience leaned forward as if pulled by a string, disbelief written across every face. Andreo grew stronger with every line he sang. His voice soared, trembling at the edges, weighted with the memories of nights washing dishes in a cafe kitchen, of long walks home in the cold Irish rain, of watching his mother hide her exhaustion so he wouldn't worry. His pain turned into melody. His hope transformed into strength. Even those who didn't understand the lyrics felt something break open inside them. Halfway through the performance, one judge covered his mouth as tears slipped down his face. The other judges exchanged a look, astonishment mixed with the purest kind of admiration. The audience was silent. Not out of boredom, but reverence. They were witnessing something rare, something true. And when Andreo delivered the final, aching note, the theater erupted. People stood instantly, clapping, shouting, cheering. The judges slammed their hands on the table in disbelief. The camera zoomed in on Andreo's teary eyes and trembling smile, capturing the exact second a poor boy from Cebu began to rewrite his future. The last note of Andreo's performance still hovered in the air like a lingering spirit when the entire theater froze. For a heartbeat, no one moved. No applause, no cough, no shuffle, just raw, suspended amazement. Then suddenly, one of the judges shot to her feet so fast that her chair skidded backward and crashed into the wall behind her. Her hands flew to her mouth as tears poured freely down her cheeks. Oh my God, that voice," she whispered, but the trembling of her voice made the words break apart. The judge beside her pressed both palms against the table, leaning forward as if trying to steady himself from the emotional blow. His eyes were glassy, and he blinked rapidly, but the tears still spilled. "Where did that come from?" he said, his voice shaking with disbelief. "Kid, you just sang like a man who's lived through 1,000 storms." Andreo stood frozen on stage, not trusting the moment. His hands trembled uncontrollably. He tried to say something, to thank them, to explain, to breathe, but his voice cracked with emotion. His knees weakened, but he stayed standing, holding on to the microphone as if it were the only solid thing in his world. The third judge, who had remained seated the longest, suddenly turned in her chair, her face crumpling with emotion. She rubbed her eyes, then looked straight at him with a raw, trembling admiration. "Sweetheart," she exhaled shakily, her voice trembling so much it barely escaped her throat. "You didn't just sing. You didn't perform. You opened your soul in front of us." Around them, the audience erupted into chants, loud, rhythmic, desperate. "Golden buzzer! Golden buzzer! Golden buzzer!" Andreo shook his head in disbelief, backing away from the center of the stage. "No, no, please. I'm just," he couldn't finish. His voice dissolved into tears. His chest rose and fell with ragged breaths, overwhelmed beyond anything he had ever imagined. One judge slammed her hands on the table. "You deserve every ounce of this moment," she said firmly, her tears shining under the lights. The judges then looked at one another. Without speaking, they shared the same decision. They stood shoulder to shoulder in front of the golden buzzer, their hands hovering just above it. The room fell silent again, every heartbeat waiting. The lead judge spoke through her tears. "For your courage, for your journey, for your mother, and for that once-in-a-lifetime voice." Their hands came down together. The buzzer exploded. Golden confetti burst upward like fireworks. The crowd screamed with joy, some crying, some jumping, some waving their arms wildly as the stage transformed into a shimmering storm of glitter. Andreo collapsed to his knees instantly, both hands covering his face, sobs shaking his whole body. Backstage, his mother fell into another staff member's arms, crying uncontrollably as she watched her son kneel under a rain of gold. "Anak, you did it, you finally did it." The judges, still crying, stepped onto the stage, surrounding Andreo in a circle of pure admiration and emotional disbelief. One of them knelt beside him, gently placing a hand on his shoulder. "The world will never forget what you did tonight." And in that moment, the entire theater knew it was true. The video of Andreo's performance hit the internet within minutes, and something extraordinary happened, something no one on the production team was prepared for. At first it was a few thousand views, then a few 100,000, and by morning, it had already crossed 10 million. Ireland woke up to a new name trending everywhere, the Cebuano Elvis. Clips of his trembling hands, the way the judges broke down crying, and the golden confetti falling over his bowed head spread like wildfire. People didn't just watch the performance, they felt it. They replayed it, shared it, cried with it, and wrote paragraphs about how a poor Filipino boy had moved them more deeply than any singer in years. In the studio, Andreo was brought back for a follow-up interview. He walked slowly, shyly, still not adjusted to the sudden attention. His clothes were simple, the same jacket he wore at work, but freshly washed. Crew members who had seen thousands of contestants before stopped what they were doing just to look at him, smiling with pride as if they had known him forever. A few even teared up when he walked by. When he entered the interview room, all three judges were already waiting. They had agreed among themselves to give him a moment he would remember for the rest of his life. The moment Andreo stepped inside, the first judge stood, her eyes instantly filling with tears. "Sweetheart," she said softly, "you changed this whole country last night." Her voice cracked, and she covered her heart with one hand as if the memory still squeezed painfully against her chest. Another judge walked toward him holding a tablet. "Look," he said gently, showing Andreo the screen. His performance was on every major Irish news page. 50 million views in less than a day. The whole world is watching you. Andreo stared at the numbers in disbelief, his breath catching. He shook his head again and again. I don't understand. I'm just a boy who sings for his mother. I didn't think anyone would care." The third judge stepped closer, wiping away a tear as she smiled. "Andreo, people don't love you because you're perfect. They love you because you're real. You sang from a place most artists never reach. You reminded people what music is supposed to feel like." Then his mother was brought in. She rushed toward him and wrapped her arms around him tightly, crying into his shoulder. "Anak, all our suffering, all our prayers. God heard us." The judges stood quietly, giving the reunion space, their own eyes shining with emotion. As the cameras rolled, Ireland watched the humble Filipino boy and his mother hold each other in a moment that felt almost too pure for television. In the comments section, people from around the world poured their hearts out. "That voice healed something in me. Ireland loves you, Andreo. He sings with a broken heart and a burning hope." Andreo looked around the room, at the judges, the lights, the cameras, the world suddenly opening its doors for him, and he whispered, half in disbelief and half in prayer, "Thank you." And once again, the judges cried. Once again, Ireland cheered. And once again, the world fell even more in love with the Cebuano Elvis.